Well, good morning. How you doing this morning? Good. Hey, by a show of hands, really quick, I need to know you be a little transparent with me if you would. Have you ever been broken up with and they say this, it's not you, it's me, right? Like it's not your fault. I just have to work on me, right? Anybody done that before? You don't have to raise your hand. A few of you, okay, thank you for being honest. What's so bad is that you've probably done that to someone else, have you not? You call them like, look, it's just not working out, right? It's not you, it's me. And I think one of the worst things, I used to be in student ministry a long time, and I heard some crazy ways to break up with somebody. I think one of the worst is the phone call. It's like, you can't even see me in person. Let me just real quick give them a call. Hey, just so you know, we're done. Okay, bye, hang up. What's even worse than that, I think, is the text message. That's a newer thing. I am older, but the text message is still in there. I heard, no joke, one of my students couldn't figure out how to break up with his girlfriend, so he wrote her a note and put it on her windshield. And I was like, we're done, see ya, bye. Or ghosting somebody. Have you ever heard of that? Just all of a sudden change their number, that's it, game over. But whatever the case is, man, I need you to understand, though, that there are times when the relationship that you're in needs to be done. Right? Y'all quiet today? Come on, you can talk to me. You're like, listen, this relationship is no longer good for me. I have to get to a place and break this off. I think the worst possible thing you could do is string someone along knowing full well they're not for you. And a lot of times the reason that people will do that is because they believe that I just can't see myself, dating somebody else, but I also don't want them to date somebody else. And so you string somebody along just to have someone close to you, even though you know full well they're not good for you. Well, I say all of this because really what I think needs to happen is you have to just break up. There are relationships that you go through that you just have to get to a point and go, listen, I have to break this off now, because the longer I wait, the worse it's going to get. And so what I really want to do through this next series, or this series rather, we've been in this series called You Asked For It. And so for the last few weeks, we've talked through some questions that you've had. Since Easter, we've had little cards in the back, and we said, hey, what are some questions or struggles in your life? We want to go through and help answer some of that. And this was one of the most asked questions, is dealing with, and you guessed it, relationships, specifically healthy marriage. And so whether you're married or you're single or you're young and you're like, I'm not even thinking about that yet, that's okay. Take notes today, because I really believe it will help you. Sound good? Okay, so what I want to do, though, is I want to get into some Bible with you today. Go over with me Mark chapter 10, starting in verse 6. Mark chapter 10, starting in verse 6. And what this is Jesus actually talking about divorce. But I just want to give you 3 verses, and then we're going to talk about what Jesus says marriage should look like. So Mark 10:6 says this, but at the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. For this reason, a man will what? Leave his father and mother and be united to his wife. And then it says, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. As I did some study for you this week, the word about God joining two people together is this word. It's suzeunomai. And you don't have to write this down. It's a big, long Greek word. But really what it means is to be yoked together. And so most of you are like, look, the only yolks I know are egg yolks. I don't know what that means. But really what the yoke is in this day and age, and you have to understand the Bible in context. Because if I told you about a yoke, you have no idea what this is. So you have to study the Bible in context. And so what Jesus is saying, the word he used is talking about a yoke. And what a yoke is a big piece of wood that would go over the backs of 2 ox or 2 animals. And so what he's saying is, hey, listen, what I'm doing, when you say I do, that I will be with you when you're rich or for poor, for better, for worse, in sickness and health, till what do you part? Till death do you part. That was a vow that you made to your spouse in front of God, going, I believe I will do everything I possibly can to stay connected, to be yoked, to be in one, in unison with this person until the day that I'm dead. That is what Jesus is teaching on. You with me still? And so that's the idea here when he talks about this. But here's the problem, or here's something I need you to see. The idea and the picture that Jesus was painting is that he's going, no, when you're connected, you're yoked together. The idea is that they would be connected one to each other, and then their job, their direction, and their goal were always the same. So the idea here is he's going, listen, you should not be married, be connected. Why? Because the Bible says two become one flesh. And what does that mean? When you are yoked together, now your goal and your direction should be the same. Are you with me? And I think most marriages where they get off is because you said yes, you said I do, but now what's happened is you put other yokes on you that now are pushing you away from your spouse and the direction that God has for you. And we're going to talk about some of that today. Because here's what's so interesting about a yoke is when they had two oxen that were connected together, one ox, when it could pull, the weight that it could pull was 5,000 pounds, one ox. But two oxen, geesen, moosen, I don't even know. But what, one could pull 5,000, but two could pull 15,000. It would pull over double what one could do together. And that's really what a beautiful picture of marriage is that marriage, when done correctly, biblically, there's so much more and so much strength and power that comes with a godly marriage. Does this make sense? And so here's the problem, though. 2 Corinthians tells us to not be yoked, same word, with unbelievers. What does that mean? That means to be intentionally connected. Now, that does not mean, I need you to hear me on this, it does not mean you cannot be friends with somebody that's an unbeliever. Jesus did it all the time. Jesus intentionally went into places and loved on people. What Paul's talking about in 2 Corinthians is getting to a place where now it's a picture of your marriage. It's a picture of being connected. It's a picture of being intimate. Do you understand? Like this is what Paul is saying. Is like, do not do this. Why? Because your goal as a Christian is Jesus. Your direction, you know where you're going. You know your plan. I prayerfully believe you know your purpose that God has given you. And when you're connected to somebody that does not have the same goal or direction as you, what would happen is if one ox was bigger and one was smaller, what would happen is instead of the bigger ox helping the small one, what would happen is it would actually drag the bigger one down. And then they could not go in a straight line because what would happen is one would be so much weaker, they would just sit in circles. And the reason I say this is because I believe some of your marriages, though you may both be believers, are moving in a circle. You're not going in the direction that God has for you, and it's because one of you has decided to stop working at it, and the other one, all they're doing is trying to keep it on track. Hear me, what we're going to do today is we're going to go through a couple different things today that I believe what has happened is you have said yes to your spouse, you're connected to them, but you're also connected and allowed other people to put yokes on you, or you did it yourself, and now you're trying to get to a place of health, and I'm going to help you take some of that off. Does that sound good? Y'all with me? Okay, so what you need to do, and I'm going to give you my title, and this will make sense in a second, but my title is this: you simply have to break up. So my title today is this: the breakup. And I'm not talking about breaking up your marriage. What I am talking about doing is breaking up the bad habits that you have allowed to carry with you in your marriage that now dictate your direction when God said, no, look, what's happening is you're going in a circle. What I've called you to is a destination. You with me? So it's called the breakup. And actually, I did some study, but let me pray and then we'll jump into this. Hey, God, thank you so much for today. God, I just pray for this word. God, I pray for every marriage in this place, the ones that will come later that are still single in this moment, God, but are praying for that person. God, I pray for those. God, I pray for the ones that are struggling, the ones that are healthy. God, I just pray that you speak life into their marriages. Because God, we know this country is attacking that. We know Satan is attacking that, because if he can split that up, it shifts the trajectory of this country. And so, Lord, I just pray for these families and these marriages. I pray you speak to them today. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. So I did some study, and actually there was a recent study done early in 2023 that said over 50% of marriages end in divorce in the United States. Over 50%. And so I was like, okay, well that's interesting. That's really high. And so I started looking at Christians, right? So you believe, hey, this is what the Bible says. And so I'm like, well, we should be in a better place if we're truly following after God. But what's interesting is, do you want to know the statistic or the percentage of Christian marriages that end in divorce? I could give you a hint. It's the same. It too is over 50%. There's no difference. And I really believe what's happening is that when we say yes to God, when we get in a vow with our spouse, we don't know biblically what we're supposed to do. And so I'm going to give you two things. There's a little bit more to this than that, but I want to give you two things that I believe you need to break up with in order to help you either eventually get into a healthy marriage or help you in your current marriage. Cool? So this first point, you can write this down. I'll explain this. Break up with your plan B. Break up with your plan B, and I'll explain this. If you would go to 1 Kings chapter 19, and I'm going to read this to you. And you don't have to flip there. We'll have it up on the screen, but this is chapter 19, verse 19. And it says this: So Elijah went from there and found Elisha, son of Shaphat. He was plying with 12 yoke of oxen, and he himself was driving the 12th pair. Elisha went up to him and threw his cloak around him. Elisha then left his oxen and ran after Elijah. Let me kiss my father and mother goodbye, he said, and then I will come with you. Go back, Elijah replied. What have I done for you? So Elisha left him and went back. But I want you to catch this next part. It says, he took his yoke of oxen and slaughtered them. He buried the plows, the plowing equipment, to cook the meat and gave it to the people, and they ate. Then he set out to follow Elijah and became his servant. What's happening here? What's happening is Elijah knew that God had called Elisha to follow him and to serve him, and eventually God had something really powerful for Elisha. Now we know this is not marriage, but we do need to understand this really is a powerful God-directed relationship. And so what's so interesting is that Elisha was very successful. He had many different plows and people that worked for him, and he must have had a huge farm, but he was working the last pair. And so when Elijah came to him, instead of just leaving them at the farm and going, yeah, I'll follow you, and if it gets really bad or things fall apart or I get hungry or frustrated or whatever, I can always come back to my plow and my oxen. So what does Elisha do? He's like, no, I am determined to do what I feel like God has called me to do. And so I'm going to make sure I'm going to kill my plan B, literally. He goes and kills the oxen, tears down the plow, cooks it, and takes care of it. Why? Because he wanted to make sure that there was no plan B. He wanted to make sure there was no way I can go back to who I used to be. I know as soon as I say yes to God, and as soon as I get in communion with somebody, as soon as I get in a relationship and God says, this is the direction you have to go, I'm no longer going to live for my plan B. Here's the problem, I think, honestly, with marriages, is there are some plows in your life you need to disrupt. There are some plows in your life you have to burn down. There are some things in your life that you continually bring along with you just in case your marriage is not what you wish it was. There may possibly be somebody in your phone you may need to delete, but you've kept it just in case. There may be people on your social media you intentionally need to unfollow. There may be some things in your life, some coworkers, some people that you know full well they are not for you. They're just somebody that is talking in your ear that now all of a sudden your plan B looks good. Are you awake? Y'all with me? I really hope I'm helping somebody because I really believe in marriages we continually have a plan B. One thing that I will plead with you, you have got to get to a place if you are married and say, I'm taking divorce off the table. Well, we could always just... It's just hard. Sometimes it's hard, and divorce is just, it's not. Biblically, Jesus flat out tells you. He's like, that is not what I've called you to, and so you have to get to a place and kill your plan B. You have to get to a place and go, you know what, I'm done with this. There were some sailors years ago, and I didn't even have this story or plan on this, but there were some guys that went up on their boats, went to this new island, and they knew they were about to fight a war. And what was so bad is they were completely outnumbered. And so the captain starts telling them, listen, guys, we have to fight with all we have. And so what happened after this is the men started going up into the island, and they turn around and all of their boats are on fire. And they're like, what just happened? Their captain said, listen, I need to get rid of your plan B. I need to burn down your way out, because then you will fight with everything you have to survive where I've brought you. And I think there's some things in your life that you continually have this plan B or this idea or this hope or this dream that God has not had for you, but Satan has somehow managed to get a way in, and you've got to get to a place and burn your boats. You have to get to a place and go, you know what, this is for me. God has called us to this. Where God has brought us, let no man tear us apart. Let's get to a place and go, I truly want to love them the way Jesus first loved me. And so you have to get to a place of getting rid of your plan B. One thing that I know as I study this is the highest rate of divorce right now are millennials. And most of them, you have conversation. There's two different things, really three things that they kind of discuss the reasons why. And we'll talk about a couple of these in a second. But the biggest thing for them is there was no commitment. It was never that you never were fully committed. You just don't do that. Even in your jobs, you do a job and you're eventually going to use that as a stepping stone to something else, and something else, and your relationships look really similar. Well, this is just going to get me ready for marriage. This is just going to prepare me for where I have. And then you spend some time, you sleep with people, you do things that everybody else is doing. And when it's time for you to fully commit, now you're looking at all of the old plan B, C, D, E, F that you used to have and comparing it to what God gave you. And now it's not enough. And what I believe that God is trying to do is, no, I need to free you from all of those things so you can truly be who and where I've called you to be with, who I've called you to be with. God wants to bless your marriage. He truly does. But you have to get to a place and be fully committed. I think even in our Christianity, if I can be very transparent for a minute, most people are committed when you're getting blessing, but you're not committed in the hard places. And I think it starts with our relationship with God first. God, how can I fully be committed to you first? If you're single, let me help you. A person will never satisfy every need you have. They will always fall short of what you wished and hoped and prayed. All the movies are just a facade of what somebody drew up and makes it sound so perfect, and that is not real life. I'm just trying to help somebody. And I think what you have to do is go, God, how do I love them well? The best place is to love Jesus first. The best place to start is if you are not content in yourself, you don't have your identity down on who I am, who God has called me to, what direction he has for me, you can be content in your relationship with him. Because if you're not content with you, you will expect another person to fulfill every need that you have, and they cannot do that. And no wonder it falls apart and ends in divorce, because you're putting pressure on them that they were never meant to fulfill, because that was only Jesus. So we have to first get to a place and go, God, how can I fully be devoted to you? So then eventually when you bring me the person you've called me to, I can love them like you love me. Write this next thought down. Break up with poor communication. Did you know that the number one reason for divorce is poor communication? Number one, poor communication. And so I'm going to give you 4 different things within this one thought here. But many, many times what happens when you bring in your old self or you bring in things that you thought you knew or didn't know, or based on your parents' relationships or whoever's relationships or movies or TV or whatever, you start living like you hope or you desire or whatever. One thing that Cassie and I learned on our first year is we were raised very different. We just were. I think by middle school, I was doing my own laundry and did all the things. I think by 18, my dad was like, get out, love you, good luck. Like that was it. Like that was my life. My wife was not that way. Her parents were like, I love you so much. What do you need? You know, it's like, I will continue to do your laundry. Let me continue to clean your bedroom. And I was like, can I live with y'all? Like this is this was your life? Like, this is awesome. And I remember our first year of marriage, I was working a lot of hours, and she was going to school and doing some things from home, and I would get home, being very transparent, by the way, be home, and it would kind of be a mess. And I was like, wait, hold up. Like, my expectation was that it would be clean because that was just how I grew up. Her expectation is that I would be the one cleaning it. And both of us were like wait, who's going to do this? And it created so many fights because what happened is we didn't know how to communicate that. Our expectation was placed on the other person, but the reality in the conversation was never had. And until we got to a place to go, hey, can we please sit down and talk about this? Then God started revealing some things in us that we just started bringing our subjective thought processes and ideologies and whatever into our marriage. And so if you would, just write this quick thought down. You have to create time to talk. You have to create, notice I said create, you have to create time to talk. Where are my parents at? Most of the time, there's like, did we get to talk today? Did I get to see you at all? I saw you in passing in the morning and then at night, and then that was it. They finally got to sleep, and then I'm exhausted and we fall asleep, and you never get to commune. You never get to have a relationship with your spouse. So all the frustrations, the good things, the bad things, all of the things go to the wayside because you never created space for your partner. And what happens is they slowly start falling in your process and in your expectation and in your line of checklists, right? My kids cannot do this, and my kids can't do this, and my job can't do this, and I got to make sure to do this and this and this and this and this. And somewhere about here is my spouse. And then you start getting resentment and frustrated because they don't give you the time. And really what it amounts to is you have to create a time to talk. Talk about what? Talk about your finances. I don't want to talk about that. That's always our conversation. Yeah, but you will always stay where you are until you have a conversation about it. Talk about what? Your parenting style. Well, I like to do this. This is how I was raised. I do this because this is how I was raised. Well, how are we going to raise our children? You have to have these conversations. You have to have the conversations about, man, I am feeling so anxious. I'm feeling so frustrated. This is what's going on in my life, and I have nobody to talk to. Are y'all still with me? Like you must create and carve time out to talk to your spouse. If you do not create intentional time to talk, you will soon find a time when you stop communicating in general. The bad part is your desire to give somebody those thoughts or anxieties or frustrations will not dissipate. It will just move from your spouse to someone else. And then you start creating a pattern of looking to another plan B because you're not getting fulfillment in your relationship, in your marriage, because you do not create time for them. I hope this is helping somebody. Because when you start giving it to somebody else, it will start to erode your marriage because now your trust or you're relying on somebody that is not your spouse. And now you start becoming slowly yoked or connected to somebody that God never intentionally wanted you to connect with. Now, I'm saying you can have friends to reach out to. You need that. You can have people to reach out to and say, man, can I just tell you? But you cannot be really intimate, and I'm not talking sexually, I'm really talking like mentally, physically. There's something intimate about being able to sit with somebody and go, let me just pour out my heart to you. And so I hope I'm helping somebody. You have to create time to go, hey, can we just sit? Maybe for us, we end up having to get up early, have our coffee together, open the back windows and just sit and time. We spend time in the Bible and our word, and then we spend time together. We usually try to spend time at the very end of the day. Well, how is this going? What's going on with that? Let's talk through this. Because if we don't, then I notice that there becomes friction in our marriage. Is this helping? Okay, so let me write this one down. Put away the defensiveness. Put away the defensive. And let me give you some Bible here. This is Proverbs 18, verse 13 and 14. It says this, to answer before listening, that is folly and shame. The human spirit can endure in sickness, but watch this, but a crushed spirit, who can bear? To answer before listening, that's folly and shame. The human spirit can endure sickness. You can be sick and get over it, but it's saying this, but a crushed spirit, who can bear? If someone crushes your spirit, it's really hard to get over it. And I think a lot of times when we speak and we come into a conversation where we are hurting or where we are defensive, you are crushing the spirit of whoever's trying to speak to you. There's a difference. Now, and you can be offended. What offense is somebody has said something or done something to you, and now you carry an offense with you. Like you're intentionally hurt, and so you carry that. What defensiveness really is they haven't even said anything to you yet, and you're already carrying something because your expectation is that they're about to say something that's going to get on your nerves. They're about to say something that's calling you out in your parenting. They're about to say something about your financial habits. They're about to say, and so now you're carrying defense. I hope you're hearing me. You're carrying this automatically going to be defensive to them. And really what happens is when they come to you with the true care and you're defensive, now it crushes their spirit. Well, they'll no longer speak to you about it. And so guess what? They go to someone else who will. Are you still with me? So one thing that will help you get to a place and get rid of defensiveness is this, and it is to take ownership of your feelings. You have to take ownership of it. I know, man, I remember one of my boys and his sports team got whipped really bad one week, and they start blaming everybody else on the team. Have y'all seen this? Well, it was his fault, and it was his fault, or it was the coach's fault, and you're pushing blame. And I'm like, Bo, what about you? Like, you dropped this, and you missed that tackle, or you did this, and did yeah, but he did, and they did, and all of a sudden, now you're pushing blame, and you will never get better at anything when you're always expecting someone else to pick up your slack. You will never move forward because you're not willing to accept the blame of what you did. Anytime I've done marriage counseling or anything, really what we start with is the person in the room. Well, my wife did, or my husband did, or they did this, or they did that. And I'm like, they're not here. Let's talk about you. Let's get to a place of health for you. Let's get to a place of relief for you. Let's get to a place of contentment with you, because I can't fix them. You can't fix them. You can't do anything for them that's going to get them to a perfect place. It doesn't matter how much you do. What you can do is you can be the best you that God has called you to be. You can intentionally work on you. One thing that Cassie really helped us with is how we say things, trying to restructure things, because I'm quick-witted and she is too. And so we'll say something. I was like, I probably shouldn't have said that. Ain't no one else? Man, y'all are so good. I love y'all. Let's spend some time together. Do y'all want to? But what I tend to do is I'll act out of my feelings or my emotions rather than what's actually in front of me. Or I'll say something, or she'll say something. And so what we started doing, and maybe this will help you, she always says, this is what I heard you say. Now tell me what you actually meant. Like, this is what I heard you say, but is that really what you meant? Because a lot of times we'll say something and they'll take it a certain way and run with it. Well, you said this. And it's like, I did that. Maybe I said that, but that's not what I meant. And so the best thing to do to maybe help, if that's you, is getting to a place and go, okay, hey, this is what I heard. Is that what you meant? Sometimes they're like, and they're like, okay, then I got to deal. Other times they're like, no, that is not at all what I meant. And so hopefully that will help you in that place to get rid of the defensiveness, because really what it is you're building a fence into a place where really you should be building, you're building a gate in front of you where you should be building a fence around you. Is that y'all should be connected together. And what happens with defensiveness is you start building it between you. Another one is this: learn how you each handle arguments and show love. This is really important because there's a book that is called The 5 Love Languages. Maybe you've heard of it. There's a guy called Gary Chapman that wrote it. But there's 5 different love languages, and I'll give them to you in a second if you haven't heard of this. Some people have. But when you argue, when you fight, there are usually 3 different responses. There's your fighters, your flighters, or your nothingers. like they literally your fighters, right? As soon as somebody says something, you're like, yeah, I oughta, like, I'm coming after you. And then your spouse will walk away from you and you're like, I'm not done with you yet. Let me tell you how I'm feeling, right? Y'all laughing because you're like, And then you have your flighters where they're the ones like, I don't even want to deal with you right now. Like, please stop moving. And what's so funny is they usually marry each other. You have a fighter and a flighter, and so you're yelling at them, and they're like, leave me alone. Or you have the ones that I was saying nothingers, but really what they are is they shut down. They may be in the room, but they will not talk to you. They're not physically, they're not mentally there. they're not in the room, they just completely shut down. And so the reason you have to know how your spouse fights or communicates is because it will create friction if you continually follow them when they're like, just give me a minute. Or if you're shutting down and they're like, can we please talk about this? I want to go over this. And I think if you both understand how you argue or how you communicate, it'll be so much more healthy. Whenever you can get to a place and go, hey, I know you need a minute. Let me give you a minute, but only a minute. Let's figure this out. Because if you don't, hear me, it will cause friction, does it not? Because you're like, oh, they don't want to talk to me. No, they don't want to talk to you right this second. Because they realize if they talk to you right this second, they're going to say something that they shouldn't have said. Or they're going to do something they shouldn't do. And so you have to get to a place and go, okay, let me give you a minute, but can we come back and let's go through this? And then, okay, so, but again, back to the book. There's a book, if you want to read it. It's called The 5 Love Languages. It's written by a guy named Gary Chapman. But there's a breakdown of 5 different ways that they believe that people show love and like receiving love. And I'll give them to you really quickly. It's quality time, acts of service, gifts, touch, and words of affirmation. I'll say them again. I see some people writing them. Quality time, acts of service, gifts, physical touch, and words of affirmation. And what it really looks like is you intentionally or unintentionally have a few of these that you just like. Like there's something in you, something in your spirit that you're like, yes, that's me. If somebody buys you a gift, you're like, oh, that was the best thing ever. It could be, I don't know, it could be something random, like a $5 gift card to Starbucks or something. You're so sweet, that's the best. Like that, and if that's you, like that, you're like, I'm gifts all day long. Some people are quality time, where it's like, I don't want you to talk to me, but I want you to be in the room. Anybody like that? Like, yeah, You're like, you don't have to say anything, just be here. Just be near. If they walk out of the room, babe, where'd you going? What are you doing? Like that, the quality time people. You'll laugh, but that's some of y'all. Another one is acts of service. If somebody washes the dishes or mows the grass or does it, you're like, somebody's acts of service over there. But you feel love, or you do those things because that's what you want to be reciprocated to you. Another one was physical touch, where they just always have to be touching you. Just know I'm here, I love you, I'm right here. Yeah, I am physical touch, and Cassie is not. So I'm like, can you touch me? And she's like, pretend like we're touching, just be in the room. Like that's our vibe. But we understand that. And lastly is words of affirmation. Where you love somebody just going, hey, just the encouragers. And there's some encouragers in the room. Just, man, you're so good at that. Man, I love your heart for, man, I love this about you. And man, I love that you did this and did that. And it's affirming you. Are these making sense? Like really what these are is you understand how you give love, because most of the time you give it how you want it. And so I want to help you, because if my wife does not like words of affirmation, I can say all kinds of words of affirmation to her and it means nothing. She's like, all right, bro, cool. Like, knuck it up. Like, But if I understand, no, she's quality time, I'll just sit over in the room and read a book and light a candle and be the thing. She's like, I just love you so much. Like, we understand that, because if you don't, you won't understand, man, I just want them to hold my hand because I need that, right? I need them to know that I love them. I give gifts because I need you to know that I love you. I do all these things because I need you to know that's how I love. And what you have to do is you have to give them what they desire. You have to get to a place and go, hey, I know this isn't me. Don't say this to them. This isn't me, but let me just do this. But getting to a place and go, no, I know this is how you feel loved the most. And so I'm going to make sure I'm going to utilize how you want to be loved. Is that helping? So I think that will really help you understand how, one, you argue, and two, how they show love. The last one is this: share the responsibility. Share the responsibility. Let me give you a verse here. And it's this, it's Ephesians 5:21, and it says, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Can I get in your front yard a little bit in the best loving possible way? Dads, it is not called babysitting when they're your kids. I need you to hear me on this. that is called being a parent. And the reason I say that is because if you cannot be with your own children for more than an hour and it shuts you down, that's a you problem, not a wife problem. Boy, that's just not my thing. Yes, it is. When you said yes to her and you said yes to the babies, that is a yes to them. And whenever it bowls you over, you're calling every 10, 15 minutes, oh, I just can't believe these kids. It's like, bro, she deserves the same thing that you get all the time. It's quiet now. See, there you go. She does. She deserves the same thing that you get all the time. And I think that's one of the biggest things that will cause friction in your marriage as a parent, especially younger kids, is that you will never give your spouse the opportunities that you get as a dad. You don't. But we have to get to a place, dads, because I am one. Hello. I can get to a place and go, no, I want to be intentional about one, loving her. And so I can show my love to her by sending her and letting her do whatever she wants to do and not blowing her up every 5 minutes and make sure my kids are safe with me. If my wife can't even trust me to make sure my kids are safe, there's a problem, and it's not her, it's me. And on the flip side, I would also say this, that I believe that husbands, godly husbands, need to live and lead from the front and not the back. I believe that biblically we're supposed to be in front. We're supposed to be leading our family from the front. Too many dads are leading their family or not at all from the very back. Every time you're asked to do something, it's a grumble and a moan or a complain. I can tell this to you and be very transparent with you because I'm one of you guys. But our wives literally are so fed up with us not leading like God has called us to lead. Ephesians 5 says that wives should submit to their husbands and husbands to their wives and both. The problem is that you have got to be a godly enough man to be able to submit yourself to God first and be somebody that they're willing to submit to. Because too often you're like, woman, you should submit. And that is not at all what he was saying. What he's saying realistically is he's getting you a picture of who Jesus is and what biblical marriage is. What did the husband do? He says you should be willing to die for your spouse, willing to die for your family, willing to get to a place and go, no matter what you need, I will give you. Most dads that I know will do that. They will go without to make sure the children are covered. They will go without, and I believe that is really what us as husbands should do, is get to a place and go, God, how can I lead them from the front? Do they see me in my word going, yes, hunger and thirst after righteousness? Passionately pursue Jesus with everything, because relationships will come and go. Finances will come and go. Jobs will come and go. But the only thing that I can stand firm on that is unshakable is my relationship with Jesus. Are we leading our families like that? And on the flip side, wives, you have to share your frustrations, but complaining is not good communication. Hear me on this. Complaining is not, well, I told you, that's not good communication. Griping is not a good communication. Sitting down and going, can I please tell you where I'm frustrated? Can I please get you to a place of understanding so we both can share the responsibility of parenting, so we can both share the responsibility of housework, so we can both share the responsibility of finances? Though maybe if you're a stay-at-home mom, you don't bring that, but what you can do is be a good steward of what God has given you. Maybe what you have to do is get to a place of a single checking account. Oh, I can't do that. Why? Because do you not trust your spouse enough to honor God with your finances? Maybe that's for you. Maybe that's something that you continually keep back because you feel like, well, it's just a control thing for you. One thing that I do think as wives, one thing that you guys can do is explain to your husband what is weighing you down. Husbands, you have to get to a place and explain to your wife what is holding you down. A lot of times, especially guys, we don't, do we? I'll take care of it. It's what we do. I'm a man. I'll take care of it. But what your spouse is supposed to do is help carry the load with you. You wonder why maybe you're going in circles. It's possible because you're not sharing anything with them and you're sitting there and they're trying to drag you. Are y'all still with me? Like I really hope this is helping. I want to give this last verse and I'll close. This is Ecclesiastes 4, verse 9. And it says this: 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them fall down, one can help the other up, but pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. I love this. He's comparing being alone and being with somebody, but when he starts talking about a cord of 3 strands, and I'm going, wait, you're just talking about 2, but really what he's saying is, no, listen, really what you need to understand is any relationship, any marriage that I believe is going to go where God has it to go, God must be in the center. God must be in a place where he is leading the direction of your house. He's leading where you're called to go. And so really what I want to do today is I want you to get to a place and go, how can we better communicate? How can we better get to a place and get rid of some of the plan Bs that I've continually held on to? And I really pray and believe that God is going to heal some marriages today. I really believe that maybe your marriage is okay, but God is about to move it up. I heard a quote this week that said, you cannot climb a mountain if there's no rough spots. Because if it's smooth, you can't go anywhere. But I believe that God is putting a mountain in front of us, that though the rough parts, the rough things in our lives, the things that we feel are hard are just a stepping stone to what God has for you on the next chapter. And so marriage sometimes feels like a mountain, but realistically, the rough patches are going to get you to a place of health, and I truly believe that. You talk to anybody that's been married for very long, they'll tell you, oh no, this year was rough. This year was hard. But guess what? We're still together, because if we didn't go through those, I wouldn't have built the trust I have in them now. And it's the same thing with our relationships with Jesus, because really the Bible teaches that marriage really is a picture of him and us, the bride of Christ. And so the best picture that I could possibly paint of healthy marriage is Jesus hauling his cross for you and for me. They don't deserve this. I just wish my spouse would do this or do that, and they really don't deserve me to continually do what I'm doing. And I just picture Jesus carrying the cross and going, it's okay, I'll carry it. I'll carry it. I'll hold it. I'll do it. Because I love you enough to put my hands and feet nailed to a cross, hanging for you. I'll do it. And if we see Jesus like that and going, God, I don't deserve the love that you give me, but can you please let me understand the love that you have for me so I can give it to my spouse, so I can give it to people, so I can give it to my friends and family. And so if you just stand with me. The Bible says that if God doesn't build the house, the laborers build in vain. And really the idea for us is our marriages are going, God, I don't want to do this apart from you. Whether we go through hard times, good times, or whatever, God, I want to make sure you are building my marriage. I want to make sure it's you that I'm chasing after. Because when you are my priority, you are my purpose, you are my goal, and my wife or my husband, their goal is you, their purpose is through you, we are so much stronger together. And so I just want to pray for you, whether you're married or whether you're single or whether you're dating or whatever it is, I truly want you to get to a place where you're saying, God, I want all of you so I can love them how you've called me to love them. So God, I just pray for every person in this place. God, I pray for every marriage. God, I just pray, I really believe, God, that you want to do something special in these marriages today. God, that this community and our kids need healthy parents. They need godly people showing them how to passionately pursue Jesus. And so I pray for every marriage in this place that is rocky. God, I pray that you allow them to see you in the midst. I pray they burn their boats. They burn their plan B. They put divorce off the table and say, no, I'm going to pursue you the way Jesus pursued me. God, thank you so much for every person in this place. I pray you bless them. You give them strength as they go throughout this day. In Jesus' mighty name I pray, amen.